what role do erotic magazines and nude imagery, what role do they play in the age of sexual freedom today? I mean, what is it?
Well, the problem today is that I fail to see how young people could really discuss Playboy because it's gone, it's been dead, okay, for so long. All of magazine culture, not just Playboy and Penthouse, but all of magazine culture has sunk, okay, and it's on the point of vanishing because of the web, the introduction, once the web gained full force in the late 1990s, okay, the days of newspapers and magazines, okay, are really, ending. Right? And it's unfortunate because the pictorial design of the magazines, the fashion magazines are always getting bad press from feminists, and they're quite wrong because the great magazines, the Vogue and Harper's Bazaar of the 1960s that I saw, okay, as a college student, were magnificent, okay, and they was put together. The editors had training in history of the arts, okay, and there were these great, bold kinds of designs, okay, as you flip the pages, and you had major photographers like Avedon and Irving Penn and so on, right? And it's really unfortunate that as the magazines could no longer afford, okay, to survive. I mean, they really are struggling. The sort of digital design even invaded them. So there's a kind of cluttered look on magazines today. You're not getting, I'm in despair about it. Like I'll be in I remember being in the doctor's office a few months ago, and looking across the waiting room, and there was Time magazine, and I couldn't see what's that on the cover of Time. Okay, all right. I don't know, what is that? Okay, I had to get up, cross the room, and look at it. It was such a little, busy, cluttered design. The cover of Time. I mean, it used to be that the covers of magazines were designed in a way that could be read visually. Going by a newsstand on a bus, okay, you'd see these magazines hanging there. Okay, so there was a boldness and an assertiveness to design that's now completely gone. So everyone is used to now. Even the designers themselves are no longer drawing. They're not using the arm. Okay, they're not using the hand. They're not these. It's not a muscular kind of a mark they're making. They're at the computer, so it's all being assembled in this very little way, okay? And so there's a littleness, and I think that's affecting the way young people, even perceive reality or perceive what they can do, okay? Everything is very managed and small, whereas my generation, we were crazy, okay? We thought we could do everything. It took me forever, okay, before I feel that I didn't grow up really until my first job. We had the attitude of we want the world and we want it now, that kind of thing, etc. All right. So Playboy and Penthouse, like Playboy, was a very excitingly designed magazine. It was beyond the question of the nudes, in it. Okay? It was just the way it was set up was bold and inviting and sophisticated and so on. Right? So no, the young people can't possibly know okay what it meant to have also these bold sexual images. And I want to keep mentioning Penthouse because Penthouse was my favorite, actually, because of Bob Guccione, an American, was married to Kathy Keaton. She died, unfortunately, prematurely, I believe, of breast cancer. But she was a very sophisticated British woman, and so the sexual scenarios of Penthouse were much more sophisticated than Playboy. The Playboy girl was always the girl next door. Everyone said that. Even Hefner said it. Okay, so she was kind of corn-fed and everything. She was kind of a version of a Marilyn Monroe and kind of upbeat. And it was, to me, it was too much Doris Day. I was like, I was harassed by. You don't even know who Doris Day is. You don't know what it was like. Okay, you don't know what it was like to be tyrannized by Debbie Reynolds and Doris Day and all that smiling that went on and with these blondes. So I was endless. Okay, my misery. Okay, that's why I loved Elizabeth Taylor because she was like the vixen in the femme fatale, and so anyway, and a brunette. Okay, but there was a huge war, okay, in feminism over the magazines in the anti-porn movement led by Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin. It reached its peak in the 1980s. Okay, and they joined with Christian conservatives, okay, to get the men's magazines banned, okay, from drugstores and where they were even a solution like, well, we'll put the men's magazines in plain wrappers or whatever. Okay, the actual sale of these magazines was pushed out of the stores, and then I think that once those magazines ceased to be kind of mainstream, accessible to mainstream, and key to mainstream reception, I think that they sort of lost they began to lose their centrality at that point also. So I was a part. I'm part. When I first came on the scene in the early '90s, finally got published. Okay, after my first book was rejected by 7 publishers, I was part of the. I said right from the start, I am pro pornography, not just tolerating pornography. I'm pro pornography because I believe that pornography is not a distortion, as I said, in the interview with the Hollywood Reporter that you're talking about. But I believe that pornography opens a window into the reality, the animal reality of sexuality, which current gender studies discourse tries to ban. Okay, they try the gender studies idea about sex is that everything about sex is managed, okay, by environmental and social pressures and preconceptions. All right? And I believe that sexuality is a primitive force, is coming from our animal nature, and civilization rose to contain these anarchic animal urges. Okay? Civilization is a good, not a bad. Okay? Civilization is law, and training men to behave honorably, okay, and to protect the poor and the weak and vulnerable and so on. Okay, all right. So if you define civilization, society as evil and repressive, okay, from the start, the get-go, which is really the unexpressed assumption in gender studies, then you imagine all human problems can be solved if we just readjust the social mechanism. We'll just make this change and that change and that change, and bring in another commissar, okay, from Washington, okay, to enforce Title IX regulations and so on and so forth, okay. These people who have no business on a college campus, okay, have nothing to do with the pursuit of knowledge, okay, to have these Batinskis, okay, with their fingers of Washington and federal law, okay, into campus governance. It's an outrage why people accept this, why faculties have not risen up, against this, okay, completely. All right. So at any rate, okay, the war against pornography waged by 1980s feminism was lost when the web came on the scene. Because at that moment, no longer could you legislate what goes into a drugstore, but now suddenly instant access everyone had at home to pornography on the web, and this becomes this enormous economic force. So now there's all this lament, the pornography, this is so horrible. Excuse me, pornography occupies the realm of imagination, okay, that art does, okay, and it deserves the same, in my view, the same respect as art, okay. You look to pornography, what is the human mind, okay, what is on the human mind today, okay, all right, what is sexy, what is erotic, okay, in pornography of a certain historical moment, okay, involves the violation of a taboo. You discover what the taboos are in any culture by looking at pornography. It will tell you what is forbidden, okay, because there's the heat, okay, is in the violation of the taboo, okay. So all pornography contains social information. I don't look at pornography, okay. I mean, I'm not interested in contemporary pornography. But there is evidence, okay, that has been repeatedly, collected over the years, that's suppressed, that men's sexuality, on the whole, male sexuality is far more involved, is far more implicated, okay, with the visual sense. So there's a visual element, okay, in male excitation that most women do not have, okay. All right, I knew that, from my studies decades ago, all right? And this is why every attempt to create pornography for women has failed. Women are not interested in pornography. They're not particularly excited by visual images. Okay? They're more excited by situations. There has to be a storyline involved with it, etc. Okay? I am not a consumer of pornography. Okay, I have to say right there. Okay, but I totally favor, okay, the complete exhibition of sexual activities. I mean, I do believe that you can draw a line. Okay, for example, I have a piece on Robert Mapplethorpe when there was a huge controversy over his work back in the late 80s and early 90s. So Robert Mapplethorpe being died of AIDS, he's a photographer, openly gay photographer who documented the sadomasochistic underground of New York City. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. There was a show, an exhibition of his work was traveling around the country. I saw it at the Independent Art Gallery attached to the University of Pennsylvania campus in Philadelphia. It then moved down to Washington, where it had been accepted at the Corcoran Gallery, which is a major museum only a couple of blocks from the White House. There it created a huge sensation. I mean, even before it arrived. There were so many protests, and then the director of the museum actually then canceled the exhibition before it even got there. There was a huge protest about it. The exhibition then was in Washington, went to an independent art gallery, which is the proper place for it, in my view, where it was very successful and so on. So I argued at the time, that I am a supporter of Robert Mapplethorpe and admire Robert Mapplethorpe's sadomasochistic and pornographic photographs, but they did not belong in the Corcoran. You see? All right, so what I'm saying is there is a place, for these things, not in the public square, where children might be, and so on, because, and there was a huge controversy, like the news media went stampeding, before Robert Mapplethorpe tried to pretend that it was about race, tried to foreground his, they did interviews in front of his photographs of black men. That wasn't the reason, that the Corcoran didn't want that exhibition, right? They were concealing the actual realities in that show. Some images so grisly I could barely look at them. It was, for example, a man who had his scrotum, in a vise. It was absolutely, painful to look at. It was true sadomasochism. So on, right? But what I said was, what was a fabulous protest when the Corcoran canceled that exhibition. Gay activists, at night, projected his images, against the walls of the Corcoran, which I thought was a fantastic and clever protest. I thought that was amazing. I said, yes, why that's so great, is because that you dilute Mapplethorpe by putting him in the Corcoran. He's an outsider. He's a dissident. To project his images against the walls of the Corcoran at night when children are in bed and so on. Fabulous. I thought that was great. So I do believe in strong lines. For example, the transvestite hooker that I mentioned. The transsexual. All right. I support prostitution. Something. I don't just believe in its toleration. I support it. I not only support prostitutes, I admire prostitutes. All right. And I don't like the way so many feminist theorists describe all prostitutes as abused by men and so on. The ones that come to light, are maybe they're abused, they've had a history and so on. The most successful and balanced, psychologically balanced prostitutes are invisible. Absolutely invisible. It's going on all around everyone. It's been going on for hundreds of years. All right, and this maligning of prostitutes on the basis of the ones who are addicted to heroin or who are abused or that just seems to me horrible. All right. So even though I support prostitution, I don't believe it should be visible. In a central square. There's no business being. Let it remain private. So similarly, there used to be a great period of streetwalkers. You hardly see them anymore because of the web. Everything now is by the web or by cell phone, all right, or Tinder or whatever. So the whole spectacle of which I used to enjoy very much, seeing on the way out of New York, on the west side of New York, as I would leave to go, going out that way, on the west side highway, you'd see all these hookers out the street, walkers. I loved it. And so on. All right, just like Amsterdam. Amsterdam is like window after window, in the red light district of prostitutes. All right, it was in the red light district of Storyville that jazz began, in New Orleans, Louis Armstrong was raised in the red light district, for heaven's sakes. All right, at any rate, so for prostitutes, it seems to me to be perfectly free to be able to solicit as they wish, but they shouldn't be around churches or the entrance to schools, or like cause any kind of a problem in the street. They shouldn't be soliciting on the street and coming up to you. In many poor countries, people, travelers are solicited, and men are constantly being harassed, by prostitutes and so on. I certainly don't believe in the sex traffic for children. Okay, that's an outrage, clear abrogation of civil rights. That cannot be tolerated. But nevertheless, if you have so I support both. Yes, I'm a pro-sex feminist. Okay, and it goes down the line. But I do believe that both prostitution and pornography benefit, from their encapsulation, in separate zones. Okay, it's like a zoning thing.